of its app, My Sadaqah. My Sadaqah is a modern, easy, and interactive way for you to pay your charity. Your Sadaqah can be transferred instantly and directly start helping orphans. Furthermore, you can donate to different projects such as clothing orphans, supplying clean water, heating fuel for the winter, and feeding the hungry. When you pay your Sadaqah, it will be used to feed, clothe, and school orphans. Our app is accessible via the App Store and Google Play Store. Download today and pay your Sadaqah on My Sadaqah.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Now, this is a live show and we do take all your questions in. So if you have a question on any topic whatsoever, you can send it in via the WhatsApp number, the email address ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call here live in the studio 0203 515 0199. Inshallah, myself and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer any of your questions. I'm your host Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Ma'as. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you doing this evening, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah, fine.
MashaAllah.
Fine.
Sheikhna, let's start with the first question, which is in regards to alcohol on the table. Now, you and I both know, and we've discussed this many times, that you are not allowed to sit at a table where alcohol is present. Now, what if it's a banqueting hall, or, you know, sometimes we have these company events and so forth, or maybe we're at a wedding where there's a long table. It's one very, very long table. Let's say there's like 30 people sitting on the table. Let's say the alcohol is at one end. As a Muslim, am I allowed to sit on the other end where there's no alcohol whatsoever?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. Well, if this table or this dining table is considered to be one whole table, one sufra, one banquet, and all sit together and eat and drink and so forth, and there is alcohol on that dining table, then of course it is not permissible to sit on that table. You have to leave this location or this table or this sufra and go somewhere else and eat. We have two narrations with this regard from the Kitab Wasa'il al-Shi'a by Al-Hur al-Amili rahimahullah. The first hadith from Imam Abi Abdullah As-Sadiq alayhi salam, when he was asked سئل عن المائدة إذا شرب عليها الخمر أو مسكر. He was asked about the dining table or the sufra in which if there was alcoholic drink or intoxicant and it was the process of drinking that alcohol on that dining table or sufra or banquet. قال, the Imam replied, حرمت المائدة. This dining table or sufra is forbidden and haram to be present there and eat with them because somebody is drinking alcohol on that table.
I see.
So that's one narration. The second narration from Imam Abi Ja'far al-Baqir alayhi salam, Imam al-Baqir, he states that لعن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في الخمر عشرة. The Holy Prophet cursed 10 types of related individuals with regards to alcohol. غارسها, the one who plant the seed so that it can be one day a tree of let's say grapes, so they can use it for alcohol purely, for nothing else, just alcohol. وحارسها, and the one who protects let's say the wine factory, protects and guards that factory or guards the drinking bottles and so forth. وعاصرها, and the one who brews and basically presses the grapes to be wine. وشاربها, and the one who drinks the alcohol. وساقيها, and the one who offers and presents.
The bartender.
Exactly, the one who basically serves the alcohol on the table to the customers.
Yes.
In a restaurant, for example, in a bar, and so forth. وحاملها, and the one who carries the bottles to the customers and so forth.
So the waiter or the delivery man.
على كل حال. والمحمولة إليه, and the one who receives the delivery of the bottles.
So, okay.
The shopkeeper, for example, or the off-license keeper, for example. وبايعها, and the one who sells those bottles of alcohol and wine. ومشتريها, and the one who buys it. وآكل ثمنها, and the one who benefits from its profit. So let's say two people are in a partnership for selling alcohol. So both gain the profits from selling alcohol. They were all cursed by the Prophet ﷺ. So the one should try their best to avoid any kind of trade related to the alcoholic and intoxicants, in which it will take away the barakah from this business, from this household. على كل حال, it brings a lot of على كل حال issues in that, God forbid, in that family in future times. لا سمح الله.
Ahsan. Sheikh, some questions have come in just now related to the topic. Can a Muslim buy or sell wine or pork to a non-Muslim? What is the fatwa on the income on one who gets by doing such a job? Now, as far as I know, Sheikh, it is totally forbidden for wine and for pork, because these are known as najisul ayn, that they are najis in all circumstances, to handle, to deliver, to receive, to sell alcohol or pork for that matter, even to those who are not Muslim.
Exactly.
Maybe you can enlighten us a little bit on what happens with the wages that are received from such a job.
Of course, it's haram, and they have to go back to their marja to see what can they do with these profits gained from selling alcohol and pork. They have to see what can they do with the wealth and the money they gained.
Another one. What is the ruling on buying and playing lottery tickets and such games of chances? Now, I know with gambling and so forth, especially with the tickets that you scratch and so forth, totally haram, not allowed. However, with lottery, I think there are some circumstances, if some of the money is going to be donated to charity, if it's for a good cause and things like that, maybe there's a bit of room, a bit of leniency. Is that how it works?
Exactly, yes. If there's intention of paying some of those money to the charity, then you can participate in that lottery ticket. Like I think National Lottery. Yeah. They spend some of it, or many of it, to the charities. Yeah, and some ulama will allow it.
And there's always raffle draws that are charity events and so forth, when the money goes towards charitable cases. Sheikh, if failing to attend the Hussainia programs and ceremonies leads to the weakening of the Islamic awareness of the individual and his family, would that constitute as a sin?
Of course, if that results in the one to weaken his aqidah, his belief, or even weaken in performing the Ahkam and the Islamic laws, like the salah, like refraining from the acts of haram, because eventually the shaitan would drag this individual, because of distancing himself or herself from the majas of Hussein alayhi salam, from attending the mosques, for example. Eventually they will have bad friends, evil friends, who would let them to even, let's say, use drugs, for example, listen to music and songs and so forth. Eventually fall into the haram. In this case, they have to make sure that they attend these majalis, so they can distance themselves from the acts of sin.
I see. Speaking of Hussainia, Sheikh, there's always children running around the Hussainia. Sometimes even play with the turba and the turab that we pray upon and so forth. What is the Islamic ruling on this conduct, where sometimes the child would pick it up and roll it and play around and throw it around? Islamically, what are we supposed to do?
Well, in overall, they should be taught that these turba or muhr in the mosques, or even the Holy Quran books, the books and so forth, these are have respect and they have to teach their children that these are respected items in the mosque, and to avoid to be disrespected على كل حال. Otherwise they need to take it away from them. Let's say the child takes the muhur and he throws it in the bathroom. That's not allowed. Or the Holy Quran, God forbid. So we teach them to respect these على كل حال items in the mosque. In Kitab Irshad al-Qulub by Daylami, he says, وَكَانَ الصَّادُقْ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. Imam al-Sadiq used to, it means often, always. لا يسجد إلا على تربة الحسين عليه السلام. He would not prostrate except on the muhur and the turba of Al-Hussein عليه السلام from Karbala, from his shrine. That's Imam Sadiq عليه السلام. Why? تذللا لله عز وجل. تذللا, showing humiliation before Allah عز وجل. واستكانة إليه, and to show humbleness towards Allah عز وجل. So we use this muhur, this clay of Karbala, which is the best clay to, or the sand or the muhur to pray on, because we have a hadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We follow Ahlul Bayt. We don't follow others who are ignorant and away from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We follow Ahlul Bayt when they say that the Karbala soil has the best degree and rank and grade in terms of prostration, in terms of shifa, in terms of istijabat al-du'a under the dome of the Imam Salamullah alayhi. Then of course we submit ourselves to those calls from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam.
Awesome. Sheikhna, how does Islam look at the notion of freedom?
Of course, Islam provides a great freedom to the humanity. The Holy Prophet ﷺ, when he came and he called for La ilaha illallah, that there's no God except Allah Azza wa Jal, of course he came to free people from the slavery towards their masters, towards their gods, statues, idols and so forth, to free the people of the earth from all those shackles, as the Quran states in Surah number 7, Ayah 157, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَيَضَعْ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. This great prophet came and to unload the burdens and the shackles that are upon them. He came, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to remove all these shackles, all these chains which was on the necks and the shoulders of the Arab of Jahiliyyah, the pagans, the ignorants. And of course, today we see the Muslims again, in the Islamic world and overall, that those shackles are now back again. And that's because they have brought all these anxieties to themselves by pursuing and following the powers in the East and the West. We see that, for example, many of the Arab countries are giving billions of dollars to some Western countries. I mean, $400 billion just signed a couple of months ago to be given to a specific Western country. Why? $400 billion is the money of the Muslims, of the 2 billion Muslims. So why should we give it to those who do not deserve it? For what reason? So this is why the shackles are still there. Although the Prophet ﷺ did his best to remove it, and he did so, but the Muslims brought it themselves again by allowing the tyrants to rule over them and to submit themselves to the tyrants from Bani Umayyah, Bani Marwan, Al-Abbasin and onwards. So without following the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, of course the Muslims will still be chained with these shackles and restrictions. So they have to lift it by going to the Kitabullah and the Itrat of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, to go back to the Holy Book of Quran and the Prophet's progeny Hadith Thaqalain is very famous. Without it, they will remain in this
I
darkness.
see. Ahsan. Check out a question here from one of the viewers. There's two, but we can combine them together, and that is, are we allowed to adopt children and consider them our own children? And what about the mahram and mahram issue?
I mean, Ayatollah Sistani has got a response to this issue that you're not allowed to write or to basically on the official governmental paperwork or certificates that they are your own sons or daughters. You can't. They remain adopted and they are not mahram to your wife at all. If that boy grows up, then she needs to wear hijab from this boy or this man in future.
Just a quick message to all the viewers that this is a live show. We do take in your questions. We have been bombarded with so many questions. We're going to try and get through as many as we can, and inshallah we'll be able to answer them. Even if we don't, please forgive us, but we will inshallah take those questions onto the next episode, and we will definitely answer all the questions that we receive during our live shows. Sheikhna, you were mentioning about freedom and so forth, and people. Sometimes people protest for their freedoms and protest against injustices and so forth. And unfortunately, they are met with, or their response from the authorities sometimes is tear gas, sometimes a really strong water hose. Riot police come with shields and batons and so forth. Sometimes these protesters are injured very, very badly. From an Islamic stance, is this acceptable or is this not acceptable?
Well, it is not permissible. No government has the right to crack down on the protesters and to basically harm them. They need their basic needs. They either have lost their jobs because of some crisis, or they need, for example, pay rise. For whatever is the issue, you have to respect them as humans and give them the rights to protest peacefully without harming them. Of course, when it comes to protesting to gain something haram, let's say in a Muslim, in a religious city or country, there are, let's say, a group of, let's say, women, they want to come out in those religious cities to walk, for example, na'udhu billah, God forbid, half naked. That's haram, that's a munkar, of course. They're not allowed to come out. But of course, you can't suppress and oppress them in this way. With tear gas, for example, beating with batons and so forth. Billati ahsan, you have to use the right method and the right way in order to basically give them their own rights. Ala kulli hal, we have to appreciate the human rights issue, their own rights and the freedom of expressing their own views and opinions to a certain limit, and never use force, never use violence against them. Ahsant.
Sheikh, a question from the YouTube. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Assalam.
My question is regarding hunting. How do I make sure the animal I hunt is halal when I shoot it and it runs away in the woods? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheikh, with hunting, if there's an animal or so forth with you, if you have a dog or maybe you have like an eagle or a hawk, they attack the prey and they bring it back. I think that's considered halal, is it not? And you don't really need to perform the zabiha or something. I think when you go for the capturing the prey, you say Bismillah and so forth. This brother here, he hunts with a gun. How can you make sure that the animal is halal?
The details are all there in the books of the Risala Amali of the Maraj and overall. But ala kulli hal, briefly, the one who wants to hunt with a gun, he needs to make sure that he's got a gun in which it would tear the flesh, it would actually strike inside the flesh of the animal and kills the animal when he arrives there, saying Bismillah, intention and so forth. When he arrives, if the animal is still alive, he needs to quickly do the dhabiha towards the Qibla, Bismillah, and so forth. Otherwise, he can't consume the meat if it dies without doing the dhabiha. So there are conditions. If the brother can go back to the website of the Maraji to search about the dhabiha, they can find more details.
Sheikh, we're going to go to a little clip now, inshallah, and join us after the clip as we will, inshallah, discuss and answer the question at hand.
if I'm looking at my friend's phone without his permission, is that haram or is that halal?
Excellent. Sheikhna, someone being a little bit nosy, looking over the shoulder of their friends, seeing what they're browsing upon, what's on their phone. Privacy. From Islamic fiqh, here the brother was, had a glance, first glance noticed that his friend was on the phone. Maybe he took a bit more time to see what they were watching, what they were looking at. Maybe it was private, maybe it wasn't private. Islamically speaking, what should have been done in that situation if something haram was performed?
In overall, the Holy Quran states, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, and do not spy over each other. In other words, you're not allowed to spy on your on others, on your colleague, on your friends, for example, especially if they have things private. Imagine that this brother was talking live with his sister without hijab, and he looked without his permission. So he committed two haram. One haram is to break the privacy by looking at his stuff, and number two, you looked at his sister without hijab, for example. So we have to be careful with these issues. We have to respect their privacy, yes, and avoid committing haram in this way.
Excellent. Sheikh, now we have some questions coming in now, and we have some questions from last week as well. We'll do one from last week and then the new one. I would like to ask if it is permissible for a non-Shia woman to marry with a Sunni man. Thank you for your explanation.
Yes, it is permissible, ala kulli hal. However, this is not encouraged, to be honest. This is due to the fact that the influence of the Sunni husband is great on the Shia wife. And we've seen many families, eventually the wife becomes Sunni as a result. I met one family in which the wife became Sunni because of some of the ahkam of the Shia they have.
Yes.
So she was convinced that to leave Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and to follow their enemies, sadly, because of some of the ahkam in the Shia thoughts, ala kulli hal. So the recommended or the advice is that try to marry from your own faith, from your own sect, from your own ala kulli hal belief and aqidah. That is safer for yourself and for a future generation, the offspring. Can you guarantee that your sons and daughters and grandsons will be Shia as well? You can't guarantee.
Yes. Excellent. Sheikh, a question from one of our viewers. Assalamu alaikum. According to His Eminence, the Ayatollah, Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq Rouhani, and if possible also the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi, is it necessary for the girl to get the consent of her father to do mut'ah, temporary marriage, or can she enter temporary marriage without the father knowing or giving consent?
In overall, the ulama agree upon the fact that if the girl was virgin, then she needs the permission from the father. There's no way. As long as she's virgin, she needs the permission.
I see.
For the marriage, yes, there's no way.
Question from YouTube, Sheikhna. My question is, Assalamu alaikum. My question is for polygamy. Is it obligatory on men to take the consent of their first wife in order for them to marry a second or third wife? Do they need permission from their first wife?
No, there's no need to have permission for that.
Excellent. Sheikh, a question from last week. Is there any dalil which is about marriage between Sunni or Shia or not allowed at all because Sunni not follow what I told the faqih? Because I have 3 daughters and their father has passed away. I'm so worried about this because in Indonesia, very common with the marriage of Sunni Shia, though one day one of them may convert. You spoke a little bit about it already, Sheikh. Now, could you help this brother here, or sister, I don't know, who has 3 daughters and their fathers passed away?
I mean, yes, it is permissible if their Shia belief remain intact. So they get married to a Sunni, let's say husband, but they keep their Shia belief without pressure to change it. That's fine. But again, the advice is to avoid it, because ala kulli hal, things might change, and of course the influence of the husband is great upon the wife and the children. So he might one day in some time persuade them to change their faith. So the advice is to marry from the same sect or the same faith and aqidah.
I see. Ahsant. Shaykhna, from the viewers, if I leave Salah, Fajr, Dhuhr and Asr, can I offer only my Maghrib and Isha prayers? I think you can, if you have like those prayers have gone qada, you can pray any prayer, and you should be able to pray. You should pray the Salah of the waqt of the time, whether it's Maghrib, Isha or Fajr or Dhuhr, Asr. But then also, you should pray your qada prayers with them if possible, no?
يعني, I think some of the ulama say you have to pray, let's say for example, first the Salat Subh, and then do the qada, and then do the rest of the wajib.
Okay.
But some would say no, you can actually pray Dhuhr, Asr, Ada, and then do the qada whenever you want of that day that you missed. Because you slept, you couldn't pray Salat Subh for any reason. So I think there's two opinions with this regard.
Wow, interesting.
If I'm not
Didn't know
wrong,
that.
yeah.
Didn't know that. Excellent. We're going to go to a short break. Inshallah, join us after the break as we continue answering your questions here on Ahkam SOS. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
I have a question regarding keeping pictures of
Is it
scholars at
permissible to
home.
plant trees by or
Was
over
Islam
the graves?
established based on peace and
Is it permissible
non-violence?
to collect donations for charity projects from
Is it permitted
individuals?
to consume canned food imported from non-Muslim
Is there
countries?
an issue for men looking at non-Muslim women?
To have your questions answered live, call in on +44 2035 150199 or WhatsApp us on +44 7415 092155. Alternatively, you can also email us on ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
MashaAllah, Shaykhna, I was going to encourage the viewers to send in their questions, but we've got so many coming in. But yes, please keep sending in your question via the WhatsApp number, email address, or give us a call 0203 515 0199. If you're watching via YouTube or Facebook Live, put the question in the comment section. Inshallah, we do our very best to answer the questions live. If we cannot answer your questions, we'll move them on to the next week's show, or the next show, which is on Wednesday. Inshallah, we'll be able to discuss and answer those questions then. So please, we don't need to know your name or where you're asking from. Just send your question, and inshallah, myself and the Sheikh will do our best to answer your questions. Shaykhna, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
A question from last week. Salam, can you go to a Jewish dentist as he is near where I live and very convenient?
I mean, yes, you can do so. I mean, most doctors in this country or in Europe or in America are non-Muslims, and many of us would go, even for surgery, operations and so forth. There's no issue with it.
Excellent. Sheikh, we've got questions coming in from the YouTube. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
What is, hold on. Is adhan and iqama wajib before salah?
As mentioned before, they are mustahab both, but you have to make sure that you start with adhan first, then iqamah. And the encouragement is on iqamah that you try to perform the iqamah at least before the salah.
Okay, another one. Assalamu alaikum. A woman who is not obedient to her husband and does not carry out her matrimonial obligations had, without his consent, left her matrimonial home and stayed with her parents for 7 months. She then went to a non-Islamic court, filed a divorce application and demanded maintenance and custody of the children. How such a woman who has violated her marital duties any right in anything from her husband? Okay, so I'm assuming that in this situation, the wife or the lady didn't really fulfill her marital obligations and so forth, was disobedient to her husband, and filed for a divorce and so forth. I mean, the question is asking that, Islamically speaking, are there any rights for the husband, and in Islamic court, what can the husband do in this situation?
I mean, in such disputes, they have to go back to the rep of the marja or to the marja himself, the hakim al-shari', to discuss the issue in more detail, to see what is going wrong with both parties, and to try to come up with a resolution and to resolve the matter. Of course, we have the Hukm of Nashiz, the one who, على كل حال, the woman who basically she leaves her husband without his permission, she leaves out, she doesn't come back, and so forth. She, of course, will be على كل حال not entitled to some of the benefits. But as I've said, they have to go back to the individual who's basically have knowledge in the marital disputes and so forth, to find out exactly what should be fulfilled as a result.
Sheikh, I'm working in a company and supposed to shake hands with customers, male or female. If I don't do that, it will be considered impolite and there is a risk of losing my job and suffering the aftermath. What should I do?
Well, the rule is it is forbidden for a male to shake hand with a female who is not related to him as a sister, mother, wife, and so forth. It's forbidden to shake hand, and the vice versa. You know, a female cannot shake hand with a male. In this case, they need to change their job in this case, or as a last resort, they can actually wear gloves, because the haram is skin to skin touch.
Yeah.
So if there's a gloves and there's no skin touch, then they can shake hand in this way without pressing the hand. So it's just a touch with the gloves. Otherwise, they have to change the job.
Sheikh, really nice, easy ones here. Can a man wear platinum ring? Yes, he can. Is it permissible for men to wear white or yellow gold? I think white gold is permissible, but the traditional yellow gold is not. No.
Whatever known as gold, it's forbidden.
Okay.
Even white.
MashaAllah.
If it's gold, it's haram. That's it.
Is it permissible to listen to songs accompanied by sounds of piano, flute, drum, windpipe, and electronic pianos?
Ayatollah Sistani mentions in his fatwa that if that music suits the gatherings of the amusements and the gatherings of the let's say the gatherings of nightclubs and music and songs, then that's haram.
I see. Sheikh, a really good question here. Even I'm actually wondering what the answer is. In salah during sujood, does one's forehead have to touch the turba, or is the sujood valid even if the hair comes between the turba and the forehead?
The forehead must come in touch with the turba.
I see.
To show your humiliation towards Allah Azza wa Jalla.
Ahsant. Sheikhna, what is the ruling on niqab? Is it a recommended act to wear it on some occasions, if not full time?
What the ulama saying overall that it is allowed for a Muslim woman to show her face and the two hands.
Yes.
That is allowed for her to show it, to basically allow it to be seen. Other than that, it's all forbidden. So the ears, for example, the neck, they have to all be covered. The wrist must be covered.
Yes.
And so forth.
Okay.
But of course, the hijab of Ahlul Bayt, Salamullah alayhim, the women of Ahlul Bayt, Zainab al-Kubra alayhi salam, Fatima al-Zahra, Salamullah alayhi, to wear the niqab or the fushiyya or the burqa, whatever it's called.
Yes.
That was the hijab of the women of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, which is good for the believing woman to follow their ala kulli hal way of hijab, but not wajib.
I see. Sheikhna, is it allowed to bet on horse racing?
Well, betting is haram, so they're not allowed to bet. Of course, it's not allowed at all.
Also, Sheikhna, is cream a barrier to water reaching the skin? And if so, should it be removed prior to wudu or ghusl? I think with creams, it just depends how much you put on. If you put, certain creams are quite thick and may put on a layer where the water finds it difficult to actually touch the skin. But majority of them are permeable, semi-permeable, so water does actually reach the skin.
Yeah, the rule is if it causes barrier or obstacle, then you have to remove it for the wudu. Otherwise, it should be fine.
Okay. Sheikhna, according to His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Sistani, What is the ruling of eating the meat of a kangaroo, which is found mostly in Australia?
Well, the Sayyid mentions that as an obligatory precaution, it is not permissible. And the same ruling is with other maraja' such as Ayatollah Khurasani, Ayatollah Shirazi, Ayatollah Fayyad. They all say, as a precaution, it is not permissible. So the one should avoid, especially those who live in Australia, to avoid the meat of this type of animal. Especially with claws. They have claws, basically.
Sheikh, is it permissible for the father of the child or the parental grandfather or the representative of the father or the parental grandfather to sell the property of the child?
I mean, it is permissible if it doesn't cause any harm to the child, to the child's wealth. Let's say he or she inherited from his or her father's late father a big amount. Then, of course, the one should protect and try to basically avoid harming the wealth of this child.
Sheikhna, what is the ruling on online trading?
If the trading is done along the procedures of the Sharia rules, then there shouldn't be no issue with it. They can trade.
Some questions from the WhatsApp, some for viewers. The third testimony, Ashhadu anna Aliin Waliullah, is it part of Adhan and Iqamah?
Yes, some ulama would go that it is part of the Adhan and Iqamah. You have to say it.
In some non-Muslim countries, the corpse is placed in a coffin and then buried in the grave. What is our duty in such a situation?
It seems to be that they are allowing, the ulama allow for the body of the Muslim to be buried with the coffin. So it is allowed, yes.
This is a very interesting question coming in. Are household chores obligatory on the wife if she has a job as well? I think whoever sent this, household chores are not wajib upon a wife. That's as far as I know. Sheikh, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But yes, if a wife is earning money, are household chores wajib upon her?
The two main wajib acts upon the wife is, number one, not to leave the house without the permission from the husband. That's number one. Number two, to offer make
yourself available,
marital intercourse, for the husband. These are the two main wajibs. I haven't seen any third wajib on this regard. So.
Ahsant. Sheikh, if transferring a deceased Muslim to Muslim countries entails great difficulty, is it permissible to bury the body in cemeteries of non-Muslims from among the followers of the revered religions, that is the Ahl al-Kitab?
No, it is not allowed.
So
they have to bury it in a Muslim cemetery, unless they ask the marja if it's an urgent or ala kulli.
Normally, the Ahl al-Kitab, we share a graveyard. There'll be a section for Jewish bodies, there'll be a section for Christian bodies, a section for the Muslim body, Shi'i, Sunni, and other schools of thought as well, purchased by the communities and so forth. Normally that's the case. Sheikhna, when a girl is considered adult from the viewpoint, when is a girl considered an adult from the viewpoint of the Sharia, according to His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani?
The Sayyid mentions that she is considered to be an adult or baligha with the completion of 9 lunar years. And he would say that it's equal to about 8 years and 8 months and 20 days of the solar calendar. And of course, the Sayyid mentions also that she needs to perform all the religious duties and acts, from praying every day, from fasting. If she's got money, then she has to go to Hajj, Mustati'a, and so forth. So, reaching that age of bulugh, then of course, she becomes like her parents in performing all the wajibat.
I see. Sheikh, a question from the WhatsApp. Is it permissible to deposit money with national banks? In other words, loaning the banks. So what the brother here or sister here is trying to say is that obviously when you put money into a bank to account for savings, the bank uses that money to give it out as loans and to make profit on top of that. So are you actually allowed to put your money into the bank when they are going to loan it out and charge interest on top of it?
In overall, the ulama allow for us to put our money in the banks, be it the Muslim or non-Muslim banks. Of course, the interest issue is something else, different hukum. But in overall, we can put our money inside those banks.
I see. Sheikh, why is it wajib to follow a marja, and where does this ruling come from, and why?
They are experts in fiqh, in jurisprudence, as the doctors are experts in medication and treating people. So we go back with the rule of the aql, with the rule of wisdom, to go back to the experts. The ignorant goes back to the most learned in order to learn and practice his duties in the right manner. That's why we go back to the maraja, experts in fiqh and faith issues.
Sheikhna, is the sweat from sexual intercourse najis?
If it's halal, it's not najis, no. From the halal married couple, no.
Ahsant. Is the practice of magic permissible in promoting good acts and removal of evil in some people?
In overall, magic or sihr is not allowed. You cannot do sihr or magic at all. It's forbidden, ala kulli hal. It's strongly forbidden for the one to, ala kulli hal, do magic for whatever purpose you've mentioned, you know, good or bad acts. At the end of the day, the magic itself is haram in Islam. You know, the sihr, and so forth.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Thank you to all the viewers for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. If you sent in a question and we didn't get to answer it, we do apologize. Inshallah, on the next episode on Wednesday, we'll be able to answer your questions. If you have a question you'd like to send in, now there's no silly question, there's no taboo topic. But here on Ahkam SOS, we discuss all sciences, all topics, all issues. Send in your questions. We don't need to know your name or where you're asking from. Just send in your questions. If you want an opinion of a certain marja, please put down the name of the marja. We have contacts with the official offices and also the official representatives of all the maraja in Qom, Najaf, Karbala and so forth. And inshallah, we'll do our best to research and find you the answers that you require. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. We'll be back on Wednesday, 6:30 here on Imam Hussein TV 3. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position. We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
اللهم إني أسألك الأمان يوم لا ينفع مال